Fergal, welcome to the Joscos family. It's great to have you on board. When you and I met last week, we spoke about how we could introduce ourselves to the wider Joscos team, and we both agreed that shooting a video and having a conversation about our whys would be a good way to do that. So here we are.
Yeah, really exciting.
So if you could start, Fergal, by sharing a little bit more about yourself, that would be great. Your backstory, your why, and it'd just be great.
Okay. When I was at university, I wasn't quite sure whether I wanted to go into teaching or whether I wanted to go into business. I've always been interested in teaching because I'm fascinated by how you can grow human potential. And I see teaching as a fantastically dynamic profession and massively powerful in terms of what it can achieve. But I also see business as very, very exciting, that you can put people together, you can focus them on a common enterprise, and you can manage your limited resources in such a way as to do really, really well. So I've always been fascinated by those two things. And is it any wonder that my career has been made up of exactly those two things? Probably half and half. So first half of my career teaching, and then becoming a head teacher. Actually, while I was doing that, I was also doing sort of business, studying at night school, doing an MBA, doing a master's on top of that. And then ending up kind of moving across into the business of education, so supporting schools so that they can be more effective in the way that they support their learners, their students.
So you've gone from the classroom and being a head teacher eventually, and then merging these two passions of education and business to create. When I heard the story of the key and the journey you went through there, it was really impressive. So I don't think I've ever told you this, but the first time I heard of the key, it was through a head teacher, and she mentioned to me, I said, the key. She said, it's an essential service. We love it because it tells us the things we really should know in a way that makes sense to us. So when I was introduced to you, and you were introduced as the founder of the key, I thought, well, this person gets it. And through our various conversations, it's so clear how your understanding of education, what schools are looking for, and as we started looking for a non-executive director to join the Joscos family and team, when you were introduced, it just made a lot of sense. There was something else that really stood out for me. It was, and very much is, how we agree that service and serving our schools in a way that has bottom line impact on the lives of learners and giving teachers confidence through the delivery of great service is what's essential. So at the key, you achieve some phenomenal customer experience, feedback, and standards. Could you just share a little bit about what those standards were and what you did to make to get those customer experience standards so high? What was the secret sauce there?
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean, I've shared with you quite a lot about how I always wanted the key to be an education organisation, and that we would be seen as being part of the education infrastructure, not being a supply company just plugging into the schools market. I wanted to look and feel as if we were one of them. So I was always keen on staff becoming school governors, getting into schools, smelling the atmosphere, having stories that they could share every week about, well, when I was in this school on Monday, this happened. Because schools are, they're quite different places. They have to be. And therefore, the people who work in them think a little bit differently. And it's really, really important that you totally understand the mindset. I mean, I guess it was easier for me because I've been a teacher and I've been a head teacher, and therefore I was familiar. But I was recognizing that quite a lot of the typically younger people who wanted to come and work for the key are super smart people, but they didn't particularly want to go into the city. They didn't want to go into big corporates. They wanted to do something with service at the bottom line. Quite a few of them had been teachers for a few years and came into the Key after that. And interestingly, quite a few people who left the Key went to become teachers. And
that says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it says a lot.
Yeah. So I was trying to create an organisation which would feel completely in sync with people working in schools. And one of the metrics that people will come across in business is this one of Net Promoter Score. It's the idea that you ask somebody how likely they are to recommend whatever it is. It could be toothpaste, but it's how likely are you to recognise this toothpaste to somebody? And you take the scores 1 to 10, and you take all the 9s and the 10s, and you subtract the 1s to 6s. And then the 7 and 8s are your passives, you just ignore those. So you end up with what's called a Net Promoter Score. And typically they're really well-known companies, your Apples, Microsoft, John Lewis, they have really quite high scores. John Lewis, I think, hit about 60, 62. Uh-huh. Apple, again, was sort of upper 50s. Microsoft, similar. So when I was looking at this, the marketing team were sort of saying, Net Promoter Score is really, really important. I was looking at these names and thinking, wow, those are really high scores. But the score that we achieved at the Key just before I left was 82, which is really quite phenomenal. In fact, so phenomenal that I didn't believe it. So I went back to the team and I said, come on, guys, this data, you can do anything with data, it's just statistics. Assure me that it's actually valid. And they showed me that the survey had been of 1,500 head teachers.
So 1,500 head teachers complete the survey, and you ended up with one of the highest scores actually I've ever seen, and actually in the industry.
Yeah. I've never seen a higher score than that.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating for me is that people told me in the early days that trying to sell into schools was the most difficult and challenging thing you could do, and that you wouldn't succeed. So I thought, you're telling me I'm not going to succeed? Yeah. That's the worst thing you can do to me.
So what was it that most appealed to you about joining Joscos, and where do you think you'll be able to add most value in your role and with your experience, Fergal?
I mean, the Key, there are about 24,000 schools in the country, yep. And about 15,000 plus were members of the Key. And there were always sort of a few thousand on top of that who were having introductory involvement with the Key. And also the group of governors that was also using the Key was huge. So I guess we had this flow of information into the Key about what schools were thinking about all the time. We could see by what schools were clicking on exactly what their interests were. Yeah. So we learned over the years what was super, super important to schools. I also was one of the staff who was a school governor. I've been a chair of the Monty Academy Trust for 3.5 years now. So I guess I've got quite a good feel. And you're still the chair of that Monty Academy Trust?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you see, do you have any views on the cloud and, its use for schools, Fergal?
Well, to my mind, learning should not just take place in blocks. You shouldn't have to go to a school, mm-hmm. or you shouldn't sense that going to a school is when you do your learning. I mean, learning takes place in life,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I, interestingly, I filled out the Gallup Strengths Finder a few years ago, and one of my, you give you 5 kind of main elements. We've talked about blended learning. In fact, we kind of came up with splendid learning, didn't we? Yeah. Thinking that, it's actually fantastic blended learning. The idea that learning can be led and provoked by a teacher and to some extent managed by a teacher, but it can be deepened, it can be built through the interaction that a learner might have with some software or whatever. If you can access all those different bits of software wherever you happen to be through the cloud, then to my mind, you're beginning to be able to achieve a vision where you can learn absolutely everywhere. We've joked ourselves about some of the strange places where we do our learning. We both laughed and we thought, okay, so learning can take place in many, many different places. I passionately believe that having a great teacher in front really can accelerate that learning. I think teachers can understand different children, where they're coming from, and they can set them off on, and they can unlock in the way that you talked about your teacher doing that with you.
Fergal, what would you say are the 3 things that excite you most about joining the Joscos family?
I think the first thing is achieving a vision along the lines that we've been talking about. Wouldn't it be fantastic in the next 2 or 3 years to just have teachers lining up to say, I'm just a more effective teacher now. I'm happier in my job. I feel more confident. Look at what my kids are saying in the class. I mean,
absolutely.
The first thing is, I think through working with Joscos, I'll have access to that. I think the second thing is, I just love seeing businesses who are really up for learning, really prepared to change, really prepared to see things from different perspectives. And from the time that I've spent with you, I can see that you really, really want to turn this into a significant organisation. Not just successful, or what successful means,
absolutely,
but you want to achieve significance. And to my mind, yes, vision, significance. And I suppose the third thing is, for me, just learning about the power of technology and what that can achieve. I'm just fascinated to see, well, what am I going to learn?
Yeah.
And already you've been talking about, you can go and visit this school because the head teacher's come back to us and said, this has been transformational. You showed me an email the other day. And I thought, wow, I want to go and see that school. And the next thing that happened was you set me up with the head teacher, and I'm going, beginning of September, to actually go and have a look around the school. And I love doing it. We'll just give the company a little bit more kind of likelihood in getting it right.
It's a really good point, and actually brings me on to something. So, Fergal, I'm really looking forward to continuing working with you. I know we're 2-3 weeks in, and we wanted to introduce you to the Joscos family in the right way, and this has been a great forum to do that in. Have you got any questions for me? Anything else you think we should be sharing with the team that we may not have covered?
I think just I'm really delighted. It's great being at the start of the journey. It's really exciting. I sense quite a buzz about the company. I know people are working from home, but it's funny how you sense these things.
Yeah.
I was quite overwhelmed when the announcement went on LinkedIn with the number of Joscos people who immediately came in and said, it's going to be great to have you on the team. I thought, wow, I was really struck by that. So thank you, guys. And I'm looking forward to getting to know people. I'm seeing Rachel next week. I'm seeing James next week. I'm seeing Jishan next week. I'm really looking forward to that. We've got our first board meeting next week.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to be great.
Very exciting times. Thanks, Fergal.
Cheers.
Cheers.